Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
All right, that's better. That is so much better.
Focus.
That's right. I'm so elated to have you with us today in Oklahoma here at Langston University in the Tulsa campus. It's a little rainy, but still the sun is going to come out a little later. So not sure what the weather is like in your service areas, but welcome to our second University Faculty Development and Collaborative Partnership for Learner-Centered Teaching, Part 2, facilitated by the faculty at Langston University, Purdue University, University of Kentucky. So we'll start right now. Welcome everyone again. We'll start right now with introductions so we can ensure that everyone that's in the room, we're familiar with you and familiar with who's among our presence, okay? So we'll start with the Tulsa campus, Langston University Tulsa campus. On the Tulsa campus, we have our project facilitator and faculty trainer, Dr. Philip Lewis. Dr. Lewis, would you like to go ahead and greet the group, please, and start with the introductions on your campus?
Greetings, how's everybody doing? We have here my esteemed colleagues. You want to introduce yourself? Starting here.
Hossein Sarjapema from the School of Business.
Emily Patterson, Harris School of Education and Behavioral Sciences.
Dr. Perry Sanders. Dr. Perry Sanders, Assistant Professor of the Rehabilitation Counseling Program.
Natasha Davis, Assistant Professor, Rehabilitation Counseling.
Ruben Herron, Assistant Professor, Rehabilitation Counseling.
That completes our group here in Tulsa.
Okay, awesome. So Dr. Lewis, would you like to greet the group, please?
Greetings, group. I am Philip Lewis, project coordinator for the Tulsa campus. Glad to be joining everybody. Welcome.
Okay, so now we'll start at the Langston University Langston campus. We'll start over here. Hold on just 1 second. We're going to rotate the camera here. Welcome, everyone, if you're just joining us.
Hi, I'm Sonia Davis, and I'm the Early Childhood Laboratory Director.
Say that again, Sonia, because we couldn't get the camera.
Sonia Davis, and I'm the Early Childhood Laboratory Director here on campus.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. I believe it is. I'm Gabrielle Davis, Chairperson and Associate Professor for Family and Children Sciences.
I'm Mike Hamilton, Assistant Professor of Management and School Business.
Speak loud for me, Mike, so they can hear you.
I'm Mike Hamilton, Assistant Professor of Management in the School of Business.
Hello, I'm Mark Missouri, Associate Professor of Finance, School of Business.
Well, I'm Bill Gaffney, tech support.
I'm Julie Delgado, Instructor of Family and Consumer Sciences.
Welcome, everyone.
Professor Cuba, Technical Administration.
Okay, say that again, Professor. I don't think they got you on.
Professor Edward Cuba. Program here in the administration.
Okay, Sheena. Sheena, we also have Sheena with us, Sheena Meadows. She's an interim assistant to the provost and vice chancellor for academic affairs at University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. Can you greet us, Sheena?
Sheena is having some audio problems. I'm Dora Sanders with the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, Director for the Center for Teaching and Learning.
Thank you, Dora, for attending again. We appreciate you. Okay. So
Thank
you're
you.
in two different locations today.
We are.
Well, welcome back.
Well, thank you.
All right. We also have Dr. Sharia Lane Mackey from Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Sharia?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sharia Lane, Family Consumer Science area of Child Development Associate Professor, and glad to meet you all again.
Thank you, Dr. Mackey. We have also one of our project team members, the evaluator of the project, Dr. Brian Haynes from the University of Kentucky. Dr. Haynes?
Hello, everybody. Brian Haynes, University of Kentucky, Department of Community and Leadership Development. Looking forward to just learning from everybody and getting to know everybody. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and have our introductions also. I don't know if they're online yet, but we'll have Dr. Kenneth Stallings, a professor of animal science, and Dr. Cassandra Vaughn, veterinary medicine from Alcorn State University, that will also be joining us. We also, I'm not sure if he's logged on yet. We also have the Dean of the School of Ag from Central State University, Dr. Alton Johnson. Not sure if he's logged on yet either, but it's okay. What we have today, we have a dynamic presentation from Dr. LeBlanc. He's going to give us a working definition of culturally centered, culturally responsive, learner-centered teaching. So Dr. LeBlanc, would you introduce your group at Purdue?
Yes, let's see, here in Indiana, it's good afternoon, and I guess it is in Central Time Zone as well. I'm Neil Knobloch, and with me is a colleague,
Levon Esters, how you all doing?
So, Dr. Levon Esters and I are here in this location. Weijie Wong is running to a class as we speak, so she got a setup, and you'll see her name also appear, but she couldn't join us today. I believe as I look across the top here of the other participants, we might have another Purdue participant. I think Bruce Erickson, is that correct? Bruce, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Right. Okay, so anyway, we'll go ahead and move on then. Welcome everyone. Appreciate this opportunity to have this dialogue. And this is a really important topic as we are working with our students, and we're trying to create more engagement with our students as we also focus on trying to create a more inclusive culture and climate on our campus. We want to try to integrate the cultural relevance into our classrooms as we also become learner-centered. So that is the conversation we're going to focus on today. I'm going to get ready here, Brian, with the presentation. Hopefully you can see that. Is that clear to everyone?
And while you're getting ready for your presentation, Dr. Knobloch,
yeah.
I want to, if there's anyone that I didn't introduce, can you take this moment and introduce yourself, please?
All right.
Okay. And so the
audio challenges out there, so certainly feel free to speak up, ask questions. This is meant to be a conversation, and as much as a interactive seminar, as much as we can make it that way. So there might be some audio challenges because I know that we've invited some in and they just haven't been heard.
Neil, can you share your screen, please?
Brian, I appreciate the coaching, and I'm going to get ready to share the screen. Here we go. Ah, there we go.
Everybody
Okay.
here?
Share the screen. Fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
We're going
Diane.
Dr. Nablock, we're going to
Yes.
hand it over to Dr. Nablock, and he's going to go ahead and do the presentation. And then after the presentation, we're going to open it up for Q&A. And also, he has some questions. If you happen to have your cell phone with you or some sort of electronic technology with you that you can log on, he has some questions for you at the end that he wants you to respond to if you haven't responded to the questions yet. Also, I will recap too. This is an ongoing Brownbag LCT University Faculty Development Collaborative Partnership for Learner-Centered Teaching. It also incorporates administrators with this particular partnership, and it is a national model funded by USDA, NIFA, National Institute of Food and Ag, and we're funded for the next 3 years. We're going to have a conference in the fall, and some individuals, they were inquiring about when would the conference be for the fall, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you. So the dates for the fall that we have so far, go ahead and block out these particular dates, and we will notify you soon as to the exact dates. October 29th through November 3rd. If you can go ahead and block out that week for us, and then we will let you know the exact 3 days that we're going to meet for the conference. The first conference will be in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Woohoo! Let's give a hand for Tulsa.
Yeah.
And then the second conference will be at Purdue University. Let's give it up for Purdue. As I mentioned last time, and our first collaborative university faculty collaborative partnership, Neil, we had some very interesting dialogue. And a lot of the participants just wanted a good working definition of learner-centered teaching, culturally inclusive learner-centered teaching. So he's going to try to provide that for us today. We also took note of a list of the trainings and the things that you recommended for future training, and we will be working on that. We're going to try to meet monthly. So we're going to start back. We won't start back in August, but we'll start back in September, the second week in September. You can go ahead and code that Wednesday in. And then for the month of October, since we'll be preparing for the national conference, we probably will meet early October and then get ready for the national conference toward the end of the month. So if you are a participant in the LCT seminars, then your conference registration is free. You're taken care of. And also if you're a presenter at the conference, okay? So we will forward information to you. I hope I didn't say too much. Neil, not trying to steal your thunder. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and let the thunder roll. Let's give it a hand for Dr. Nebula.
All right, thank you, Olympia. I still have plenty of rain left in my clouds, so hopefully we can join with the downpour. I'm really glad to hear that Oklahoma is receiving rain. Our prayers went out to you as you were experiencing the wildfires. I do have some friends, and they were keeping me informed of the kind of the scary nature of what was going on there. So appreciate this opportunity. Sorry I couldn't join you 3 weeks ago. As you might have heard, I was on bereavement leave, and it really was kind of a joyous commemoration of my grandma's 101st. She passed away on her 101st birthday, so I was there and couldn't join you, but I'm glad to be a part of this today. We're going to frame this seminar discussion around 3 topics today. The first one will be what is learner-centered teaching. The second is what is inclusive learner-centered teaching. Also, we'll refer to that as culturally relevant pedagogy. And then we'll wrap up this seminar with what popular topics or what topics are you interested in as we then schedule the fall seminar series. We're looking at doing monthly seminars, and the goal here in the month of April was to at least begin introducing the what the project's about, what these ideas are, and then to make sure that we line up what you're interested in learning more about. I will warn you that the topic today is probably just going to be enough to scratch the surface, and so we can dive deeper at the end of that, our conversation today. We can go deeper in the fall. As Dr. McGowan has already introduced the team, so that was just, I guess, a slide that we passed over already. Let's begin the conversation today with what is learner-centered teaching. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, and that's not to say that I do not want to go deeper in this, but just to make sure that the pacing of this is quick enough that there's time for questions and knowing where you might want to go in the future. So you'll see across the bottom, there's some goals we have in mind as we think about being learner-centered. We want to think about being a teacher that's no longer a teller, but a facilitator. We want a teacher who's going to lessen their authority and focus on having less authoritative, at least the authoritative power structure needs to be diminished. And so you're trying to do that in a way that tries to let students feel like you're closer to being on a similar level, a similar playing field. The third is to build knowledge and help develop learning skills. So it's no longer about memorization, it's really focusing on developing and constructing knowledge and skills. The fourth is to look at how you can make your students more responsible of learning. So sometimes it's, rather than answering their questions, sometimes you will help scaffold the conversation by asking additional questions so that they can start to sense that this is about them making choices in how they want to learn. And the fifth area is focused more on formative assessment, and not so much on the grade. It's more about students learning and knowing that they're learning, with the assessment giving them the feedback that they are learning, or perhaps what they're missing, so that you can then help them know that this is how we learn naturally in the human process. It's not about just going to school to get grades so that you can then go and get a job. I'm going to work across this and talk about learner-centered teaching as a way that, as you think about your role as a professor in the classroom, what does that look like? We've already mentioned this idea that you'll become less of a lecturer, less of a teller, less of just providing one-way information, and think about how you can create a dialogue. Think about how you could start to ask questions, and as you work through answering those questions with your students, then you start to facilitate a conversation. Active learning also has a lot of cooperative learning or collaborative learning structures that we'll explore deeper as we go through this topic. The next one is, as I mentioned, really thinking about what your power is as a teacher in the classroom. And what we mean by this is that the teacher usually assigns grades. The teacher is in control, or the professor in your case. The professor is one who the students are going to naturally respect because they have this position, or they could naturally respect that power differential. And you're just trying to move that power from being in the level of a position, because you're the professor, you're really trying to move that to sharing the power in a way that's relational, sharing it a power or sharing it in a way that it's about the relationship and it's not because of your position. And you do that by simply getting to know the students and relating to them, asking about things that are going on in their world, in their life, how are they doing? And as you do that, it really becomes a power of influence rather than a power of position. The third area I want you to start thinking about, and what we can explore deeper in the fall, is to think about the role of the content you're teaching. So many times we just give students too much content. And so we need to back up or zoom out a little bit, think about it from a bigger picture level, and we do this by doing the backward design process. And so this might be something we could explore further. In the backward design, we focus with the end in mind. We focus with what are the outcomes that we want the students to be able to know or be able to do. So what is the knowledge? What are the skills? You know these as learning objectives, perhaps, but those outcomes really are the targets that we want students to be able to do. And then as we work backwards, we think about, well, how would we know that? That would be the evidence. And then if we want to think about it one more, backing up one more step, we would say, what would we need to do with the students or have the students do with the assignments in our classroom, with each other working as teams, so they can generate the evidence so that the evidence then demonstrates that they have met the outcomes. So that's what we mean by thinking differently about the content. So it's really about organizing it in a more conceptual way and organizing it in a way that students can start to see that there's concepts and there's themes that then they can get their, they can buy into and start to work with as they apply the knowledge. The fourth pillar we wanted to talk about today is who's responsible for learning. And as I mentioned, this is who we want to be responsible for learning would be our students. So it's as much about teaching them how to learn or how to learn some strategies to be able to be successful. Perhaps it is in taking your test or completing the assignments, or perhaps it's using a rubric that they have input in saying, this is what we mean by the evidence that you're going to have to perform for this assignment. So it's really getting students to weigh in and help influence what this class experience looks like. The fifth area is, again, focused on this idea of assessment and evaluation. So many times we do this for the purpose of assigning a grade, which translates to a GPA, and students become extrinsically motivated to accomplish that. We want to back up and think about this from a different perspective. When you do something for the first time, you probably struggle with it, or you may not be real efficient with it. So you want a chance to try again. You want a chance to get feedback. How did I do? How can I do better? And be able to then build your knowledge and build your skills through that opportunity of learning from the feedback mechanism. So this is how we organize this as we think about the formative assessment, a developmental approach to giving students feedback about how they're doing on the task or on the skills and assignments we have in our classrooms, trying to perform, etc. So again, the focus is on feedback for learning and not just, it's okay to give grades, it's okay to have final exams, but that should not be the only time that they get assessed. They should have assessments throughout the course, and even in low point ways that they feel like there's less risk involved. So I'm going to stop there and see if there are some questions or comments before we go to the next slide. And the next slide will focus on culturally relevant teaching. So just wanted to clarify or present to you and clarify what we mean by learner-centered teaching. I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions. By the way, Bruce Erickson said that he wasn't set up for a microphone today, so he did say hi by sending me an email. I appreciate that, Bruce. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go on into the next part of this presentation. And it's focusing on culturally relevant teaching, or you may see culturally relevant pedagogy. Another very closely related construct out there is called culturally responsive teaching. So if you look, you'll see that they're very similar in how they're being presented. And Gloria Ladson Billings, the reference is at the bottom of the screen. Not sure if you're able to read it. It's small for the purpose of making it fit, but that is where you can actually go to the literature and find out more about this construct. What we do is we think about culturally relevant teaching by looking at what do you think of yourself and how do your identity, that is, really refers to one's identity, as well as what are others' identity. And it's to try to explore more deeply is how you see yourself as the teacher, and also then how you believe your students can be successful. So it's really starting to think about in what ways do are your values and your personal interests, in what ways do they become embedded in your teaching? Is telling them personal stories about who you are, perhaps your experiences with this content, perhaps what things were like when you were younger, or when you were their age. And it's really doing this in a way that starts to pull in not only your cultural background and your family experiences, your community-based experiences, but you're also trying to demonstrate in this conversation, you're trying to make it feel safe that as a teacher, if you start sharing this, you would like them to share. And then when you start asking them questions, they can see you put yourself at risk. And so when you ask them to start to talk about their background and their the assets that they bring into the classroom, and really this is a great way of thinking about it, is what are the cultural assets? A way that some people have done this is to get students to answer questions regarding their family. What are the things their family do around this topic? What things are done in the community? So let's just pick a topic of food. I have a couple students that developed a lesson in my course regarding cucumbers and the pickling process, so cucumbers and pickles. So that would be an example of a topic, and we could then ask, how many of you have eaten pickles? You know, hands go up. You could then ask, how many of you know where pickles come from? And maybe a few hands go up. Grocery store is probably where the comments are going to come. And you can keep going further. I know this is a simplistic example, but I hope that you can start to see. You can then ask, okay, where do the cucumbers come from? If you went to a grocery store, where does a grocery store get them? And you keep going backwards to say, how many of you, okay, we've identified they come from fields or gardens. How many of you have a garden? Okay, if you don't have a garden, do you know someone who does? And you may actually link back to maybe a parent or a grandparent or a friend or a relative or somebody they know that now has done something with this topic in a way that's no longer school-based, no longer college or university-based, but it's real-world-based. And why did they grow those cucumbers? Well, Grandma took the cucumbers and she did something with them. What was she doing with them? And you start to talk about the pickling process. You start to talk about they were storing food so that the food could be preserved or at least conserved to the point where you could consume them when the cucumbers weren't in season. Why is that flavor? Some people buy them because of the flavor. Why are those flavors important? What other flavors have that acidic flavor to them? What other things are fermented and pickled? And so again, you start to just try to mine it out of the student. You try to bring it out of them that this topic we're talking about really is something that is embedded in their life. It's no longer just based upon, this is important for you to learn because I'm the teacher and I want to tell you this. I'd like to also focus on a second point of culturally relevant teaching, and that is social relations. What do we mean by this? It really is about the student and teacher relationship. So no longer are you wanting the student just to learn content and just to apply skills, but you may have a goal in mind that you just want to have a positive relationship with your students. And you do this by demonstrating that you care about them. There are many ways that you can demonstrate how to care about students, but the first step is to simply take interest in who they are. Find out what things are going on in their world, then follow up with them next time you see them. If one of them says, well, my dog isn't doing very well, I had to take it to the vet. The next time you see them, ask about their dog. I mean, these are things that many professors do already, but just starting to see, this is what we mean by culturally relevant, and starting to make those connections that it's about the individual's identity. The assets they bring into the classroom is how you can take your social relations to a more specific level to show that it's about their assets and playing a role in the learning process or in the experience together as a class. The third area is back to the conception of knowledge, and this is where there is overlap. The overlap with learner-centered teaching and culturally relevant teaching is when we talk about knowledge, it's now about constructing knowledge. It's about helping students see how knowledge is built, how it comes together in a way that it makes more sense to them. And there's a process we can go through in the fall through the backward design process that really shows how we think about this and kind of organize the content in a way that may be more insightful to your students. So learner-centered teaching and culturally relevant pedagogy are going to come together in this project. Learner-centered teaching has been organized as you will learn through active learning, I have mentioned. Also inquiry learning, which is driven by a problem. And then if we go into the real world context, we call that contextualized learning. So these are the three approaches that we can use, and we can break those down into specific strategies on how to do that. When we think about how we're going to do this for the project, we bring inclusive learner-centered teaching together by really having two pathways. On the left-hand side, you'll see I shared learner-centered teaching, and that would be the strategies that are going to be applied in these three areas of inquiry learning, active learning, and contextual learning. And we do that by organizing content using the backward design process. On the other pathway, you'll see culturally relevant teaching focuses on the relationship side. So on the left-hand side, you'll see it's much more driven by content and learning content in a way that you can apply it in a real-world setting or for your future careers. Culturally relevant teaching focuses on the relationship, and it's focusing on what we would call the social value that's established with your students. So this would be building trust, knowing how to demonstrate caring relationships, building rapport with your students. These are just a few examples of what we're going to do to try to show how to do this in a way that is culturally relevant and how it then relates to the content or the experiences you want your students to have in your classrooms. I believe I have marched through this in about 15 minutes or so. I know it's probably a little at the basic level, but it at least is trying to define and conceptualize what we're thinking as we go into this topic. So at this point, I'm going to hit pause in my comments and see if there are some questions or some feedback. Do you have any comments that you were, as I was presenting this, what you were thinking? What were your thoughts about this?
I do. In LU Tulsa, the not grade-oriented aspect, I really kind of struggled with that. I had one class where the students could take the quizzes, and there were a number of quizzes in this class, but they could take them over and over to get to the correct answers, and they just did not take advantage of it. They didn't seem interested in it, and the few students who do take advantage of it are the ones who don't need to. So what am I missing?
Yeah, so I mean, I certainly don't want to come across that you're missing something, but I do think a topic that might be worth putting on our list of future topics for seminars would be student motivation. And just exploring as a group, how do other instructors, how do other professors in our different campuses, how do they do this? I mean, we can frame it as these are some ways that the literature talks about doing this. These are some best practices. I think it's important that we just try to facilitate and learn from each other. And so I would be thrilled to see that student motivation would make the list.
Another observation that I do have in terms of grading, and I'm just thinking of this now, but if and it does not have to be an exam. It can be attending a community event or watching a video. But if I put the words bonus on it, I mean, it goes like hotcakes.
Yeah, so
that
maybe here might tell you something about how they
Motivation.
Yeah. That's just now occurring to me.
Yeah, that's really good. I think another topic I'd like to see on our list is basically different assessment strategies that have worked for people. So what additional ways could students apply the knowledge and really get them to see maybe the relevance, or see it as it could be maybe less risk. Bonus means there's no risk. If I do it, I know I'm going to get it. And why not do more of those smaller, low-risk assessment activities? And if that's what motivates them to do it, you're thrilled because they're doing it. You know, and we'll have to think about, okay, how do you weight the grading and all that? I understand. You know, we don't just want to say there's one way of doing this, or that it would water down what your expectations are. But that's a great idea. I like that.
Just raise your hand.
So we have a couple ideas on the table for maybe future topics. Are there any other thoughts, reactions?
Yes, Ruben Herron from LU Tulsa. If for 12 years students go and get the traditional sit behind a desk, sit behind regular hours, it's graded, and then all of a sudden they go to college and say, well, now you're allowed to think, now ask questions about your education, so forth and so on. Well, how is that? For 12 years, they've basically been told how to get their education. All of a sudden, after 1 year, they say, hey, now you learn, and now, give some input. How do you look at that whole thing? Because if they're learning for 12 years in school, the opposite of what we're talking about, learner-centered teaching, how do you increase or combat, and I say combat, that might be the wrong word, but how can you transition from that? Because if we're asking them to think outside the box when they become college students, but they're not allowed to think outside the box in traditional public schools, and then they come here and we're saying, well, become a learner-centered teacher. What does that mean?
Yeah, Darren, right? Yeah. You just
Ruben. I'm sorry. This is my first time. I'm a first timer, so please excuse me.
Yeah, no worries. I just wanted to get your name right, Ruben.
Ruben Herron.
A really important point. There needs to be a transition. Your students are not familiar with, even you as a teacher may not be familiar with this, and you may feel a little bit awkward as you transition from the traditional style that you've been using, or definitely your teachers or your students have been experiencing from many teachers, not just you. So there is an article called The Bumpy Road to Learner-Centered Teaching. And I would say this is another topic we should put on the list, and we should probably have it early in the fall semester, because the study shows, Ruben, that there's seven phases that students will go through. And one of them, your wording was really accurate, combative or hostile. And that's actually one of the phases that students will actually express as they go through this. But the tough part is knowing that that's likely to happen, and then knowing how to navigate that. And you have to get through stages 3 and 4. 4, I think, is a tough one. I'm going off of memory, which is scary nowadays. But when you get basically through the bottom of this valley, and you then start to walk back out of it in stages 5, 6, and 7, that's where most people give up when they're at the bottom of it, stage 3 and 4. And they say, oh, okay, I'm frustrating you. I don't want to do that. This is no fun. And so you give up. And then you're back to doing the same old thing, which is obviously you're here because you want to grow and you want to try some new strategies. So we really need to then continue to work through that, work on the stages 5, 6, 7, so I don't have all those memorized. But Brian Haynes is on this call as evaluator, really as an expert. And this is something he could help us facilitate because he's done some studies. He has done some learner-centered teaching and some studies with his students that also this whole 7 or 8 step process is exactly what he experienced as well.
Well, I'll make sure I pull that article and make sure I educate myself.
Yeah, please do. And I think it would be fun, maybe if we would have a chance to just skim read that article before the seminar, and then we could talk about what are our experiences and how we navigate it. And I certainly welcome other comments about this. Ryan, feel free to pitch in for anybody, and we're also open back on the floor to more ideas and thoughts you might have, just in general.
Neil, this is Brian, but that's a wonderful point, and I think it's worth the discussion because it's really, really frustrating. It's frustrating for the students, it's frustrating for the faculty, and then administrators also have a weigh in as to whether or not it's an appropriate fit for the classroom. So there's everybody weighing in on this, and you have to have the confidence to get through it, and that's the tough part. So I think that'd be an excellent discussion.
Thank you, Brian. I open up the floor for more comments. Either what we're currently talking about or other reactions to what inclusive learner-centered teaching might look like as we go forward.
So Neil, this is Bruce Erickson here at Purdue. I finally got my headset hooked up and my 1:30 meeting was canceled, but I appreciate your presentation. I learned a few things, but the thing that I struggle with a lot in large classes is getting to know the students, and part of your method there of getting their confidence is getting to know them. But when there's 80 in a room, I struggle to to even learn their names. So what wisdom could you impart to me to getting to know? I think I've had like 1,200 students just in the last 2 years in all the classes I teach.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Bruce, for joining us and even finding your headset there. That's awesome. Glad you asked the question. There is a whole other dimension to doing learner-centered teaching and inclusive learner-centered teaching when we increase the class size. There's a transition we just talked about that you have to get past the comfort zone of doing this and to become skillful at it. And usually we feel more comfortable doing that when our classes are smaller. What do you do when they get larger? That is another excellent topic area that I think we need to explore and certainly put on the list. That yesterday I happened to be doing a presentation, and you can watch the archive presentation online, but just a quick little strategy was raise your hand if, and you ask the question, your main topic that you have. And sometimes just that little gesture, Bruce, I'm just trying to give you something in the immediate that you can try, but I certainly want to go further and deeper by exploring this as a potential seminar topic. Basically learner-centered teaching strategies for large classrooms would be the way I would pitch it. That just showing that you're open and you want to learn. There are other ways to do it as well. As you know, there's polls, there's surveys. Sometimes there's electronic tools that you can just get them to respond to right there, real time. And you can see the graph show up of how the students responded. And they may not even relate to the content. It might just be really fun questions or non-academic questions, just to get to know the student better. So we can certainly throw some of the tech tools in there as well. Dr. Esters? Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know you want to make sure that.
Yeah. So good point. I would definitely put that one on the list as well.
Okay, well, appreciate that. And I know we have a lot of technologies. We have the clickers and we have the other interactive things. And I've tried some of them, and I need to get back to doing more of that kind of thing. So thanks very much, Neil.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We got a comment here. This is Olympia from Langston Main Campus. Dr. Evia Davis has a comment and a suggestion.
Well, first, I'd just like to just kind of look at the chart with you, the PowerPoint presentation, Learning Center Teaching. You mentioned that teaching, the role of the teacher is really to teach and to facilitate. But I also like to add that the teacher also evaluates. And in addition to that, at the institution of higher education, we're always looking at accreditation and looking at the process of evaluation. You mentioned that, not just provide grades for the students, but we also look at how we can improve the program. We look at the strengths of the program, and then we also look at the weaknesses of the program in order to improve your program area, in our case, early childhood. Additionally, as we think about cultural relevant teaching or cultural responsible teaching, as educators, we must look at and evaluate ourselves in terms of what are our beliefs? How do we believe that young children learn? We also must look at their cultural background, their cultural heritage, because we know that knowledge breeds learning, and the end result is that we learn to live in peace and harmony with one another. So we must look at that. We also must have reciprocal relationship with our students, as well as with the parents if we're working with little ones. The conception of knowledge, you mentioned that we must build on how we build on knowledge. Of course, I look at the constructive theory to be related very closely with learning-centered teaching. And then lastly, you mentioned something on culturally relevant teaching, the social responsibilities. We must teach to our students' interests, their abilities, and also their learning styles. Thank you.
And this is Christina George in Tulsa. I have a comment as well. Learner-centered teaching is focusing on the learner, that is true, but there's also an important aspect of collaborative education and engagement that will help with that learner-centered teaching and inclusivity we want in our classrooms. If we approach the classroom as saying this is collaborative, I have as much to learn from you as you have to learn from me, then we engage in it together, and it's mutual learning versus a hierarchical standpoint.
Yes, I would like to thank both of you for sharing the perspectives. To me, it's the direction that we need to continue this conversation, and so those specific ideas should really become part of future seminars. So I really appreciate how you've added additional ideas and content or perspectives there. Thank you.
Hossein Sarjaprema from Tulsa campus. Dr. Neil, great presentation, but I still struggle applying learner-centered teaching in quantitative analysis, such as statistics, math courses, and engineering courses.
Yeah, so I think different content areas do lend themselves to doing learner-centered teaching differently. So I would like to add really inclusive learner-centered teaching in engineering, in mathematics, or in statistics. I think if we can start to invite those who have done this or have maybe experienced successes, it would be great to learn from them how they do this. And I do know that there are some experts on our campuses, teaching experts, if you will, not just the experts of the knowledge, but those who have learned to do it well, excellent teachers in the classroom, in these domains, to share with them how we do this. And so that's another great idea. Go ahead.
I would add, this is LeVon Esther's at Purdue University. I think what I would add, I just completed teaching my stats course yesterday, as a matter of fact. I teach a grad level applied data analysis course. And what I've done to make the material culturally relevant to the students is to use examples, not only that they're data, if you will, and examples from the disciplines, because the courses I teach aren't that large. The course I teach is not that large, but I still use examples that are tied to the data that they have in their projects. And also what I do, especially when I have, in this case I had several students that were students of color, I try to use examples from context that they would understand, they can relate to, whether it be data tied to school communities from where they live, So for example, yesterday, a data set came out, was released by the Civil Rights Office of Civil Rights. And so that's an idea, the course is over, that's still an idea to draw from those types of data such that these are examples that are tied to their communities, to their context that they can be familiar with. So I think in terms of teaching STAT course, the extent to which you connect to those, to their, to context that they understand and that they know, and I think that helps to contribute to this notion of course, quantitative course or stats course being, or for that not even a research design course, being something that's more culturally relevant.
Excellent. So I'm looking at the clock here, and we're getting really close to the hour, and I want to be respectful of time because I know that we have other things to do, and we want you to continue to participate, knowing that we'll hold true to our hour-long schedule that we set for these seminars. We are going to update the survey that we have started or that we're building. And we're going to add these additional topics, and then we would like you to share with us to what extent are you interested in these topics, so we know which ones we should start with in the fall, or at least which ones we should definitely get in for fall and spring. So we're looking at doing monthly and seminars, and as much as we can, interactive seminars in this format. We've started to pilot this month of April. And when we send that URL out, please complete the questionnaire, and then we'll share that again, the results. We'll share that through you electronically so that you can see what those results look like. So appreciate everybody getting on. Dr. Olympia, I'm going to give it back to you, and you can close it up.
Okay, let's give Dr. Nublock a hand. Wasn't that wonderful? Remember the last seminar that we had, April 4th, remember I said I had something special for you, so that was really, really special, wasn't it? So let's give them another hand. We have another faculty member. She had a suggestion for our LCT seminar for September.
Yes, this is Sonia Davis at the Langston campus, and I just wondered if you might be able to add to your future seminar topics the bumpy road to learner-centered teaching article, that maybe we review it and discuss it in future seminars. For September.
Okay, say that. So,
excellent. We appreciate this. I appreciate that. Let's let this be driven by the participants. So great idea, and let's get things rolling in September.
So she's recommending that we all peruse and view the article, The Bumpy Road to LCT, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Is everyone in agreement on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So before we come, so Dr. Nublock, if you could send that link out to us and send it to me, and we'll get it, make sure our campus representatives, our university representatives have the link. And that's all I have for today. That's it, believe it or not. Let's decide on the date. Let's decide on the date together, okay? And please, if you have other colleagues at other universities, because it's all about networking, so we can improve our administrative level, on the professorship level, even on the staff level, whatever we're doing, we want to be our best at it. So this is what it's all about. So we can help each other. We're doing a great job. Okay. So second week in September, Wednesday, what is that day? And at this time, if you logged on late and I didn't get a chance to recognize you, Dr. Lewis, do you have anybody else in your room? Anyone on our satellite campuses?
No, we have Dr. Mary Ann Joseph from Alabama State logged on. She's been listening in.
Okay. Say the name again, Dr. Lewis.
Dr. Mary Ann Joseph.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a professor in rehabilitation counseling at Alabama State.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lewis. And Dr. Lewis, he reached out to another colleague at another university. So if you know of someone that you would like to participate in the LCT University Collaborative Partnership, please do not hesitate to invite them. Thank you, everyone, for your suggestions. And also the date. We're looking at the second Wednesday in September. Can someone give me that date?
September 12th.
Is that okay with everyone? September 12th? All right. Dr. Stallings, we see Dr. Stallings has joined us. Let's give Dr. Stallings a hand from Alcorn Stage. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.